One of the things I love about Washington Square Park is that it has a soundtrack. Of course, there's the buskers who are playing music, but even without them, there's always interesting sounds, interesting sights. You know, that might be lame, that might not be the most original thing anybody's ever said, but that's why I have an entire city at my disposal, and the only place I really want to go every night is a 5-minute walk from my apartment to Washington Square Park. Does laziness have anything to do with it? Yeah, probably. Also, every spot has its own soundtrack. Nothing sounds quite the same in any one place. So I guess I should try to be funny. I should try to be courageous. I should try to figure out something to put on these. I can talk about what I'm thinking about working on, some ideas I'm thinking about working on. I want to do a video about superintelligences, artificial intelligences, the idea that we might be living in a simulation. I think I might have one or two things to add to that conversation. I think one of the main problems with most of the arguments, and now I'm not disagreeing with the conclusion, I'm actually just disagreeing with the premises. The conclusion that we're likely living in a simulation, I actually take no issue with. I agree with it. It seems entirely possible given a set of very reasonable logical arguments. We can form logically consistent sentences that end with us being a simulation. We can craft a narrative that makes it so that believing we live in a simulation is reasonable. We can make stories. We can tell ourselves stories about that. And they make sense. That's not denigrating them. That's all we can ever do. That's all we can do when we're right, and it's all we can do when we're wrong. We make up stories. And then if there's no obvious inconsistencies, people acknowledge that they can believe it, that they might be able to believe it if their senses corroborate it. And there's always going to be some people who just believe it so hard, just because it's a believable sentence. A certain percentage of people will 100% believe any believable sentence until the day that they die. Because that's how we come up with good ideas too. That's how we decide on good ideas. We don't want to believe that when we're listening to two people, one of whom sounds crazy to us, the other sounds sane. We want to believe that we know which is which, that we can predict the future, that we see reality, that we know what's going on. And yet, it wasn't long ago that Elon Musk was being derided as a lunatic, as someone who was crazy for thinking that they could build a car company because they had started a .com, PayPal. Imagine he had said at that time, not only will we build the electric cars we're talking about, forget that. We're going to do something even harder. We're going to build a massive battery plant that will churn out more batteries than every other factory in the world combined. It's going to be the largest building by footprint in the world, just so that we can make the batteries for our cars. Do you think that people would have thought he was more sane or less sane if they'd heard that? And the people who were wrong, we got some biases that help with that. You just forget it. You just pretend you knew all along. You just focus on the few things you got right. Oh, you never said it was impossible. You never meant he was literally insane. You were just saying it was highly improbable, but he managed to pull a rabbit out of a hat. Nobody knows which stories are true or false. We believe the story we tell ourselves. And when people talk about artificial intelligence and super intelligences, or even moderately intelligent intelligences, whether they realize it or not, they are telling themselves a story. And that story is that they can think like a super intelligence. Like they can think like an artificial intelligence. Countless lines of self-modifying code is what we think we can think like. Not only is this code capable of improving itself and learning from the environment just like we do, but it isn't even made out of neurons or cells. Any argument that relies on that story is going to prove flimsy. It's going to erode and dissolve over time into something better. But we can't even think like ourselves in the future. If you asked me in 1990, how should you build the best encyclopedia in the world, what would I have said? Now, if you asked me, I would say, well, you use an open architecture to bring a crowd of passionate individuals together to build together an online encyclopedia that leverages the countless personal computers that everybody that are just pervasive everywhere. You know, you're in 1990. Yeah. Anybody there imagined that we would live in a world like today? And yeah, okay, you'll point to one or two people who might have said something that sounded right. Yeah, but nobody knew at the time that they were right. They didn't know at the time that they were right. Of course, a couple of people are always going to get lucky. Now, that doesn't mean we should just give up, that we can't think about the future. I do, and I try to predict it, and I try to forecast it. It's how accurate your story is, how good of a lattice it provides. It's kind of like, I view the stories we tell ourselves as almost like a tarp we put over reality so that we can see it. Like, reality is the invisible man, and you throw the tarp onto it, and you can start making out shapes, and you throw the tarp on, you say, I see a nose, I see a curve on the very top of it, you know, because the edges are still falling around the sides. And you say, well, maybe this is a human, because the height is about right. And, oh, now I can see the shoulders there, and now I can see the chest, and okay, I can say it's a man. It's a male human being. And you're crafting a story, and then something happens, and the rest doesn't fall right, and now it's just the statue. It's the bust of a human being, right? The story is changing. You know, if somebody asks you before you can see too much, you say, oh, that's a human. All the evidence is telling me that's a human. And then as it goes down more, reveals more, you say, oh no, it's a statue. And I knew all along. I mean, that's what we do. The tarp is bad if it's too rigid, if it can't bend, if it can't fold, it won't reveal anything. But if it can be flexible, if it can fold, if it can bend and wrinkle, then we can get a clearer picture of things. That's why I don't think about intelligence from a homocentric viewpoint, right? The assumption at the heart of nearly every comment about artificial intelligence is that it will be an evolution of human intelligence, of human information, of the information that's encoded into our bodies. That is not what it will be. It will be an evolution of information, right? We know it won't be our bodies. It won't be neurons. It may be structured in such a way as to mirror human neurons, but they will not be human. And why will we make them human? Why is that going to be what everybody wants to do? Everybody who's working on artificial intelligence now is just trying to make better machines. There's only information. Intelligence, like everything, is an illusion. It's a human construct. It's not reality. It's something we imagine. It's something that goes on in our minds. And you can't observe your own mind. I think that's where I'm going to end it. I do have more to say on it. I do have more positive things to say about it. I do think that you can make some predictions about artificial intelligence, about super intelligences, and about future intelligences, which is another critical component that people ignore, which is that in their story, they can predict what future people will be thinking. The key is in understanding that we are an expression of information, and artificial intelligence will be an expression of information. I'm talking about an information-centric view of things, of the universe, rather than a homocentric view of things. What I love about these new media platforms, YouTube, Steemit, Twitter, whatever, doesn't matter. The platforms are evolving. They're getting replaced. They're mutating. They're just digital portals into our lives. The beauty of them is that we don't have to make shows like they used to make them. We don't have to follow the same rules, obey the same structures, have the same limitations. I can sit here until my heart desires, and I can just leave when I'm done. Done with the first episode of Andrarchy in Washington Square Park, starring me, Andrew Levine.